Most of us know Tom Baker, who is our speaker today. For several years, Tom and I were outpatient therapists in the same practice here in Virginia Beach. Tom continues to contribute to our community in that way. Tom's talks inspire us through thoughtful inquiry, poignant stories, and generous humor. Let's give him a big fellowship welcome.
Let me check the water. Water today, I assume. On this good, clean May morning. It is vodka. Or kind of odd tasting water. Took the edge off. Well, thank you. Yes. I've had my breakfast this morning. Very good. You know, A Course in Miracles says something that really made me believe in it. And what it says is that we are not bad. Human beings are not bad. That sounds like a simple thing, yet it flies in the face of so much of traditional Christianity. Traditional Christianity says we're bad, which makes God mad, which makes Jesus sad, and which makes the devil glad. Cling to Jesus, says the old church, and the blood of the Lamb will wash your sins away. Now, most of us do not believe exactly that anymore. We're not thinking, I've got to cling to Jesus in order to go to heaven. Near-death experiences have shown us that you'll go to heaven unless you don't want to. Everybody goes. Even those who've never heard of Jesus. Or even people who've heard of Jesus and said, well, that's not for me. They still go through the tunnel, still see the light. The Dalai Lama will see Billy Graham. And both will see Donald Trump. They'll all be together at the great by and by. The excommunicated former Roman Catholic theologian Matthew Fox, who is also going to heaven, wrote a book called Original Blessings that replaced the darkness of original sin with the light of original grace. I'm so glad he did that. I just never could believe when I looked over in a hospital of a nursery of children that they were all a bunch of sinners. I always thought that the church should have written a sign or something that said, caution, beware, sinners in a group in need of baptism. So if we're not bad, then what's wrong? Something is obviously wrong. We had a school shooting 2 weeks ago. Another one. People are still starving. People are still selfish. It looks like they're in need of some correction. So what's wrong with us? I think what's wrong is that we're crazy.
You need a good therapist.
Yes, I don't want to be narcissistic about it, but maybe that's what we need. We're out of our ever-loving divine minds. Now, The definition of insanity is radical subjectivity, living in our own worlds. We see it in marriage. First, you are my dream come true. I know that's what Kathy was to me. I had a projection of her as kind of a three-part person. She would be a nun, a stripper, and a version of my mother. That was an awful way to start. I got sane when I realized my wife was a person and could not be summed up with my female role models. Today I realize that the less I know my wife, and the more mysterious she is to me, the more I love her. I went from insanity to love in 26 years. Pretty good for planet Earth. Now, one of the things that strikes you about insanity right off is how sure the insane are about what they believe. Delusions are fixed like stars in the heavens. There's no talking the insane person out of what they know is true. I was a seminarian in southern Kentucky, and we had a sister church that was a Pentecostal church. And in that sister church, people would speak in tongues. And the minister of the church would interpret what the person said when they were speaking in tongues. Now, we had a pastor named Father Jerry Timmel. Father Timmel was the sweetest, nicest, kindest, tenderest, gentlest person you ever could meet. But every time somebody spoke in tongues and that woman interpreted what she was saying, she would say, "Oh, now we have the servant of the whore of Babylon among us. He's sitting right here in that despicable uniform he wears with the little white collar. His name is Jerry." And Jerry would look up, and Jerry would twiddle his thumbs. And he said, "No, dear, we come in peace." And she would look at him and shake. And he would smile and say, "In peace, dear, in peace." And somebody would speak in tongues some more, and she would say, "Servant of the whore of Babylon." This went on over and over again. We come in peace. He couldn't talk her out of it. Nobody could talk her out of it. She was crazy. The next thing is how completely subjective the world of the insane person is. They make up their world, and that world is a complete reflection of them. I knew a paranoid schizophrenic man who felt terribly guilty for thinking cuss words about everyone around him. So he thought they could hear his thoughts. And that's why they were treating him differently. He thought everybody hated him. Think of the hell that must have been. To think something about other people and think they hear you and then they hate you. Horrible. And finally, the insane are terribly lonely. People don't believe what they are so sure of, and they think of them as weird for thinking that the government is speaking to them through the radio. No one wants to listen to that intense and startling news that the world is ending next week. Yet perhaps that is how we appear to God. Our world is always ending or on the verge of it. Just watch TV. It's sort of like Andy and Barney and Mayberry. Remember Andy always looking for his bullet? and he was always afraid that the crime wave was coming to Mayberry. He was always on the edge of things. When we laughed at Barney, perhaps we were laughing at ourselves. We're so sure of the illusions we believe are true. Like blame is the way to solve problems between people, and how war leads to peace, and how guilt makes good behavior. That craziness we act out in is the ego. It's completely egocentric, and all judgment is narcissistic. That something is wrong with you if you're not like me, and life must be lived on my terms. Watch a child or an adult throw a tantrum, and you will see how explosive our self-will is. It must be my way. Edgar Cayce said that the strongest part of us is our will. Now, Jesus comes along and offers us something else. He offers us a way which is beyond himself, and one with the Father who lives in the heaven of sanity. Jesus, as Francis said, is our brother, the psychotherapist. I apologize for my narcissism. Finally, we are lonely because everyone is a stranger and potentially an enemy. Loneliness makes everything worse. Marriages are often lonely because the ego is determined to make the one we love a stranger and finally an enemy. Then the ego's constant goal of separation can be achieved. So what's the solution to our divine insanity? What are we going to do? Is there hope for asylum earth? Of course there's hope. There's a good deal of it. But we have to know what to do. The first thing to do is not to know. Claim the ignorance that is our inheritance. I know little or nothing. I know a lot about a little bit, but I seldom see the whole in things. Then I realize, number two, that I give everything the meaning that it has for me. When I first got married, my wife used to clean up the apartment all the time. And I was kind of surprised at that, and I thought, wow, her hobby is cleaning. She seemed to love to do it, and I thought maybe even she was OCD, that she was a little crazy. I asked her, do you like cleaning up the apartment? And she said, no, I hate it, but I love you. So there was my fantasy, and it came with a diagnosis. We project our own interpretation onto people all the time. When I finally asked Kathy if cleaning was her hobby, she, of course, said, no, it's not my hobby. It's something I don't like at all. But I love you. What if we asked God about what we don't know? What if we asked God to name things? Very recently, I asked God what love was. Because love is so many things to us. That word covers so many things. And I got the thought very strong that love means that there is no guilt in me, and I'm seeking no guilt in you. I'm seeing you as innocent, and I'm seeing me as innocent. I'm okay. You're okay. Okay. What if I make a habit of knowing by not knowing, especially in terms of guilt? I don't know, and I ask to know outside of the meaning that I've given everything. This is amazingly simple. Anybody can do it. But it requires a willingness and it requires curiosity. The insane are no longer curious. They know, they judge, they worry, often angrily. The sane encourage, compliment, and inquire. You've known people like that. They walk in and things get bright. Like Cheryl. She's like that. She sings and we, oh yeah. We kind of wake up. She's Glenda the Good Witch of the fellowship. Those people say to us, how are you? You're amazing. You can do it. And somewhere in their minds, they've taken an oath. And that oath is, I will never accuse another of hurting me. And I will no longer seek to find guilt in you or myself. Then the sanity will begin to return. Your world will widen. Strangers will be potential friends rather than inevitable enemies. The stress of constantly controlling reality with your impotent rage will lift. We do, speaking to Mr. Einstein, live in a friendly universe. Mr. Rogers knew that. There's this wonderful story of Harvard asking Mr. Rogers, or the students, the student body of Harvard, to ask Mr. Rogers to give the commencement address one year. And everybody thought it was going to be a disaster. Invite Mr. Rogers and everybody will laugh at him. Everybody will make fun of him. It'll be a mess. But they let him come anyway. Mr. Rogers got to the podium and he looked out over the group and he said, "Sing with me. It's a wonderful day in the neighborhood. Da 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 da, won't you be mine? Won't you be mine?" And sure enough, the whole group sang. They'd grown up with Mr. Rogers. They knew the words to his song. Well, that will awaken us out of our insane sleep. If we would allow peace to break out all over, if people would assault one another with compliments and encouragement, and neighborliness would characterize the world. You say, well, that's a pipe dream. Call me crazy. Call me crazy. But that's a new kind of craziness. The craziness of peace. The craziness of love. Thank you.